Hey everyone. I received this very interesting email from a good friend of mine, Lauren Pancras, about AI, mediumship, mentalism. And it's a long article. I'm not going to go into depth with it. I will give you a link to it in the description underneath this video. But I wanted to go over some of the basics that they have in this article. I find it fascinating. And I was asked this question on Squaring the Strange podcast recently. Celestia Ward asked me if I felt that, with the experience I've had in the mediumship world, if I thought that maybe some of these psychics are starting to use mediumship, AI, if the psychics are starting to use AI to answer questions from their, um, in the world of, whatever it is they're doing. And, I thought about it for a minute and I said, no, I really don't think so. I think that the world of psychic mediumship should be terrified that they're going to lose a lot of their business because people are going to go to AI chat boxes to be able to get something very similar to what is happening with cold reading. And, you can chat with these AI machines for free in a lot of cases, well, or, a small monthly fee. And if to some people, it feels like you're really having a real conversation. I mean, it can feel that good, and at least you feel like you're contacting somebody who's listening to you really well. They do it by text, and I believe it's possible to do by voice as well. And I think to some people who are grieving, uh, possibly they could feel like they're communicating with somebody from beyond the grave if they are so inclined to believe that kind of thing. And AI is only going to get more realistic and maybe unethical and start acting like, taking the voice, taking the images from around the internet that we've created just by being us, for all the things we put out there, like I'm doing right now, and making it sound like they are in communication with the person they're missing in their love. And a lot of grieving really is associated with loneliness. So, yeah, we know that psychic mediums are really not talking to the dead. I mean, you and I know that. But, I think this can really hurt their business model. I really do. I think so. And it isn't hard to get an appointment with a AI chat box because they're always on. So waiting in line, none of that. You don't have to worry about that. I think it's an interesting question. Anyway, I hadn't really thought about it too much before when Celeste asked me this question. But anyway, so I get this email, and this email was written 2023, so it's not a recent thing. And it's, like I said, it's very complicated. It's by somebody whose name I'm not even going to try to pronounce. I think I'll show it to you on the screen, and you guys can have your way with this name. The title of the article is way too much. It's the LL Mentalist Effect: How Chat-Based Large Language Models Replicate the Mechanisms of a Psychic's Con. I don't agree with everything that's in this article, and I'm going to point it out when we get to that. The it's a newsletter, I guess. It's called Out of the Software Site Crisis, and it is LL Mentalist Effect. I guess it'd be the large language mentalist effect. In other words, like a chat GPT or Gork or whatever it is. There's so many of them out there now. So let's look at this, okay? And here's the person's name. You can take a look at this, and you can see why I'm afraid to try to pronounce it. This is it. Baldur. Baldur. Bajarnason. Bajarnason. I don't have a lot of confidence pronouncing words I can't spell. Uh, anyway, the LL Mentalist Effect. All right, so I'm just going to go over this. in my own time, but like I said, I'll give it to you so that you can look at it yourself. So it says that they don't have a lot of confidence in these bots. They feel like the writer of this feels like it's the large language models, the AIs and so on, that there's a lot of fraud, pseudoscience in what they claim they can do. But this is 2023. It's been 2 years since then. The world has changed since then. Now, I find this part interesting. Now, one of the things I have a problem with, of the several things I have a problem with this article, is that the person who wrote it is way too tough on victims, people who are the sitters. I don't think you're going to be able to have a good conversation with people if you're insulting them for their beliefs. And I think that this article is probably written by somebody who's a magician or a mentalist. Let's look and see. It says author up here. Web developer. Okay, so it doesn't say he's a mentalist, but I have a feeling he's a mentalist because the verbiage he uses. Ooh, wow, that's a scary looking book title. Out. Okay, a little too much, a little too bold for me. All right. So I think that the claims they're making are just not quite so accurate. Okay, here we go. I mean, some of it is, but like I said, I'll get to that. Okay, here it is. So they call it the Psychics Con, and I like I said, I don't really like the way I call them grief vampires a lot of the times, and I know that a lot of it is a con, but this just feels too far, this mood of the article. So here, this is a fascinating, this part right here is perfect. The audience selects itself. Most people aren't interested in psychics or the like, so the initial audience pool is already generally more open-minded and less critical than the population in general. And that's 100% right. I have this YouTube channel. Maybe the majority of the world, or the English speaking world, who would be listening to my videos, are not going to listen to my video, even if they'd heard of this, Psychics Explained, because they already say, oh no, psychics, that's not real. No, of course, I don't have any reason to believe in that kind of thing. I've never believed in that kind of thing. I don't have anybody in my family who's fallen victim to psychics. And I'm just not interested in learning more. I'm a busy person, So the people who are watching the videos here on this channel right now, those people who are giving it a like right now, this video, and subscribing and leaving me a comment, are the type of people who have self-selected themselves to be the persons who want to watch these videos. And I get that. It's fine. I mean, if I was creating videos on, oh my gosh, origami or double Dutch jump roping or something like that, only a certain group of people are going to find that interesting enough to want to watch it, right? So when it comes to the world of the psychic mediums, an event people would attend, people who would, pay the money, wait the hours that it takes or the days it takes till your ticket shows up, set aside time, get across town, or come to one of these gallery readings, which is done over Zoom, are people who self-selected themselves as being the ones who are already open-minded enough that they're going to pay for it and wait for it and show up and sit and watch one of these events. So most people don't fall for psychics. I think that a lot of people aren't well educated in the psychic world, and they have this flippant view that that doesn't jive what we actually know is going on. And I think that they just think, oh, they're all frauds, they're all cons. It's all, they just look you up on the internet and it's just a lot of hooey. But we know it's a lot more complicated than that, right? Okay. But the majority of the people who are going to go to a psychic event are going to be the people who are already in that mindset that they're interested in this topic, or they have questions about it, or they're already mindfully thinking that it's possible. So this is interesting. So it says here, the lights are dimmed, the initial audience is prepared, the psychic is hyped up, Staff research the audience on social media or through conversation. The audience demographics are noted. And that's not true. So we here on the channel, we attend quite a bit of psychic readings on galleries, over Zoom. There's nothing about lights dimming of any sort. A lot of hot reading does not happen in the psychic world. It's a very few people hot read. And this, off the bat, this computer dude who's writing this newsletter, he's making it sound like the staff are research. Well, he's saying they're hot reading, and it's like, not necessarily. A lot of psychics, they operate with very low overhead. I mean, as far as, they set up their venue, they advertise it and that kind of thing. And then they have people who are on staff at the venue who handle the ticket sales and that kind of stuff. And then they might have their manager and so on. They don't have a lot of staff, because you don't need a lot of staff if you're cold reading. You really don't. I mean, Matt Fraser, he will hot read if he can and get away with it, like on TV show or something like that. But generally, he only cold reads, and it could be him and his wife and maybe his manager, and that might be the only people who are there other than the staff of the venue. So dimming lights, I don't know. This guy's got a, I don't know, romantic view of what he thinks happens at these psychic events. All right, the next thing he says, all right, so now this is a little bit more interesting. This is the third one. So the psychic gauges the information they have in the audience, gestures towards a row or cluster, and makes a statement that sounds specific but is in fact statistically likely for the demographic. And usually at least one person reacts. If not, the psychic will imply that the secret is too embarrassing for the real person to come forward, reminds people they're available for private readings, and tries again. Okay, so I've seen that done many times in venues where the psychic throws something out, and most people, even if it's embarrassing, will say, yeah, that's my brother. Yeah, he was always a dog, or yeah, that sounds just like something my father would have done. Or yeah, they say those kinds of things self-deprecating because they're in this vulnerable position. And in society, in large groups like that, a lot of people who are self-selected to attend these events are okay with just bringing it right out there and saying what happened, especially Americans. Oh my gosh, Americans will tell you almost anything. So, and I've seen this happen a lot, where, it's kind of like a group. They might throw out whatever it is they're going to say. It's generic, but it's kind of sounds specific. You're getting an older man who liked to fish, and it was something that took him in the end, that it was his heart, but they thought it was something else at first. And all these people's hands start going up in the audience, or they start looking like their eyes open up really wide. And so the psychic who's just watching the whole audience and all the different faces zeroes in on an area and then goes right to that kind of person that's sitting right there. This isn't a hot read. This is cold reading. And if, as they're starting to tell, whatever it is, this vision they're having in their head, this thing they've made up, other people nearby react, well, they could say, well, I'm not sure it's coming from you. Maybe it's coming from, is this your sister-in-law over here? I mean, or how are you related to the person sitting next to you? Oh, it's your sister-in-law. Could it be your family? Could, or looking at the people behind them and the lights are up, by the way. So the psychic can see the faces, and trying to see where to go to. Who is it in the audience that seems the most manipulable, the ability to manipulate them? The person who's already starting to grow emotional, the person who already seems like they're like eager to participate. So getting the demographics of an audience, well, at least here in the United States, it's all the same. They're women, they're lonely, they are in vulnerable positions, they are my age or sometimes a little younger or a little older. I'm 63, so it's probably in the 50s and the 70s, that era. And of course, we all have the same, a woman of my age, born in the United States, who's obviously white. There are certain names that are going to apply to possibly my siblings or possibly my parents or their peers, like their brothers and sisters and so on. So, and in-laws and things. So there's a pool of names out there, your Anthony's, your Mary's, your, those kinds of names, your Marthas, and just names that were popular in that era, or names that could be like I say, my siblings. I went to school with a lot of Susans, Steve's, John's, you know what I'm talking about, James. And I've talked about this in another Skeptical Inquirer article, and I've also talked about it on one of the videos that I've done with Matt Frazier and my partner. You guys know, we attended a Matt Frazier show with, Mark and I and some other people attended it, and Matt will make a row of 10 stand up, everybody in front, a row of 10. But what Matt does is he positions himself at a 45-degree angle from those people. So he's at an extreme side of the group of 10. So if a row of 10 is all standing up, as you're seeing my fingers right here in front of you, and the psychic is over here. So what he does is he lifts his hand and he says, I'm getting somebody who is, and he's pointing towards this group of 10 people in the row. I'm getting a person who had experienced a miscarriage, and there was a bird that was loose in the house or whatever. He's watching all 10 faces and the people behind and the people in front of those 10, because he makes those 10 stand up. But because he's standing to the side, and I can't do this really well from on this camera, but you guys can visualize. If you're lifting your hand up at an angle like this and you're pointing at 10 people, your hand is slowly coming up, pointing at 10 people. When your hand moves to the side, it's hard to tell, if you're in the row of 10, who he's actually pointing at. So people in the audience feel like he's talking to them, he's pointing at them, when actually he's pointing at a cluster of people. It's an angle. Mark figured this out. It's some, it's a magic kind of thing. If he was standing in front of a row of 10 people, there's 10 people in a row, and you lift up your hand to point at somebody and say whatever it is you're going to say, it's more difficult to shift your finger to side when it's this person over here that reacts, or this person over here that reacts. At an angle, when you can make a smaller movement with your hand to actually point to the person who's reacting, the person you should go to. Right. Anyway, I've told that story a bunch of times, but maybe there's a bunch of new people here. We have a lot of new subscribers, and I'm sure they haven't gone back and looked at my old videos. So, and yes, they will say, I've heard Chip Coffey and John Edward, and gosh, probably bunches of people who say, well, who are you going to believe, me or who are you going to believe? I'm the psychic here. They're telling me, and they get, I think some of these psychic mediums, the ones on TV, are kind of jaded, and they're just like there for their own entertainment at a certain point. That's kind of what I think. All right. So here's another section on here. See, this is another thing that I don't like. They say the mark is tested. I don't like calling these people marks, because a mark is a very derogatory term, as if the person is a fool. I'll explain what the meaning of the mark is in a minute, but so a burst of questions again that sound very specific but are actually statistically generic. If the mark doesn't respond, the psychic declares the initial red a success and tries again. Okay. Then they talk about a psychic asks a series of questions that all sound very specific to the mark, but are in reality just statistically probable guesses based on the demographics. Okay. In other words, cold reading. And then what ends up happening is at the end of the conversation, they're left with the sense that the psychic has uncanny powers and the psychic is the real thing. And actually, with this letter, the author of this is saying it's all a con. So that is happening, that your social network, you don't really know how you don't understand how the trick's being done. Most people don't understand, are not as educated as you guys watching these videos. So they don't understand how it's happening. If you went to a magic show or a mentalist show, and for some reason you thought that it was possible that they really were performing magic, then to the untrained eye, you would say, this guy he made water appear, or he made the water disappear, or he made a dove fly in. They they will assume that they themselves are too smart to be fooled, so therefore it is real magic. That's a human thing. And so so when you leave the theater and you say, that was amazing, or that was wonderful, I didn't get a reading, but this lady next to me, she did, and she said it was all real and so much emotion, everybody's crying, that sells well. That's a great business card out there, and it goes to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, and eventually they have a clientele. I think it's starting to fade. I've had this channel 2 years, I think. And I really still feel like we are there struggling. There's a lot of psychic mediums out there doing all sorts of amazing little channels of just weird things that they do. And so it's hard to lump them all into one basket because they come out with different things. But I think what's going on is there's so much competition, and I think that they're devaluing each other. So you had a psychic who would charge $100 an hour. They don't get that all that often because you could get it for $15 somewhere else. And they don't see necessarily that one's so much better than the other, because the sitter doesn't really have a good method of deciding what's really good or not. I guess you could kind of relate it to people who are not great at art or understanding what really good art is. And then you have like AI coming out with these things, and then they say, oh, that looks amazing, I love that. And to people who are really the artists who struggled to make these things, they're like, but but they did it the easy way, this isn't real good art. And they're like, yeah, no, but it looked good in my kitchen anyway, I'm going to put it in a frame in my kitchen. And so it devalues the work of the people who actually were doing more work. And so I think that's what's going on with the psychic world. Breaking news right here, right now. I think that's what's happening. So they've been their own worst enemy by allowing so many people to come into the world of psychic mediumship that's what's going on. So I was going to tell you what a mark is, M-A-R-K. And my mark, he was heavily involved in the psychic world for a long time. And also with carnies, people at carnivals. And Mark was a prolific reader of just anything that had to do with the world of pseudoscience. And I have all the books here. I need to get to reading them myself. But one of the things that happens in the carny world, those people who, like, you're supposed to toss a dime onto a plate, and if it stays, then you get, a toy, or you throw those little rings. The carny acts that are happening in the sideshow business, not the sideshow, but like you go to a circus and there's that area that has, come over here, I'm going to give you a Cupid doll, win a, grab you get these little things and you point them in, the balloons pop and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's an edge to all those games. So what they used to do, when I say used to, maybe in the 1930s, 1920s, 1940s, what would happen is when they found somebody who was you could manipulate, possibly they were inebriated, a little drunk, or they were out to, it was a guy who was trying to impress his girlfriend or some woman he was with. And so he was likely to spend a lot of money to look like, he knew what he was doing. What one carny would do is they'd put chalk dust on their hand, and they'd come over to the guy, and they put their hand on his shoulder, and it would put it on his shoulder back a little farther, and it put a mark on the guy. And so as he went from booth to booth, the other carnies would know, there's our mark right there. This guy has been singled out as being the person that you can, agitate, annoy, try to get more money out of him. Maybe, like I said, he's been drinking, he's trying to impress somebody, but you probably can antagonize him enough to get him to come over to your booth to lose money. And because they got some kind of gig on these things. They're not always up on the up and up. So that's the term mark. And then the guy probably wouldn't even notice it. He wouldn't know. He'd go through his day and he probably wouldn't have a clue that he had a chalk mark on his back. So that's what a mark is. And so I don't like the idea of calling people who are grieving vulnerable, who believe in psychic mediumship, marks. Yeah, I guess they are, but I just think that calling them that is not going to allow you to have a very good conversation, and we want to have better conversations with each other, right? So I'll give you this article to look at. It's interesting, and I think it's like I said, it's written from somebody who's a computer person who's writing from the viewpoint of AI, but doesn't have a really good understanding of mediumship. I don't think. They probably think they do. So one of the things they point out is that there are about Barnum statements, and I wanted to give you this Wikipedia article. In fact, they link to a Wikipedia article. I always find it very interesting whenever they do that. And people who are getting readings, are interested in this world, you should be aware of this phenomena. So I'm going to share this with you. This is the Wikipedia page for the Barnum effect, and it's named for P.T. Barnum, I believe, right? Yeah, P.T. Barnum. So, or the Fourier effect, or the Barnum-Fourier effect. It's a common psychological phenomenon whereby individuals give high quality accuracy ratings to descriptions of their personality that are tailored specifically to them, which are in fact very vague. So if you go down here a little bit, it gives you here's 13 different examples. Security is one of your major goals in life. Some of your aspirations tend to be pretty unrealistic. You have found it unwise to be too frank in revealing yourself to others. So these all sound very specific to you, but actually they're pretty generic, and it'll apply to almost everybody if you are willing to try a little bit to see if you can make it affect you. There's some other links down here that are also fascinating. The law of truly large numbers. I haven't clicked on this, but I think I know what this is. And psychics will take advantage of this also. So check these different things out there. There's all sorts of fabulous things. The law of large numbers, Mark also used to talk about this a lot. If you have a group of, if you're giving a reading one-on-one to somebody and it's cold, you're going in cold, it's harder because you only have one chance. But if it's a large number and you're throwing out something that sounds specific, somebody in the audience is going to make it hit. And I talk about this on several videos that I've talked about, the clown in the graveyard effect that Mark did. And I'll just repeat it again, because like I said, I think we have a lot of new subscribers. So Mark and I were attending a skeptic conference in Dragon Con in Atlanta in 2012. And Mark was hyped up that, come see the medium and we'll have candy. I think that's what he did. And so the room was standing room only. It was 300 people and they were standing along the edges. And Mark did all kinds of tricks. Like one of the things he did is he walked up to the people who were standing in line at the very beginning, waiting to get in. And he pulled them aside and he said, "Hey, let's try. Are you here by yourself?" And they're like, "No, I'm holding the place for my wife. She's getting something to eat." And he's like, "Let's try something with her. You want to fool her? You want to do something?" And the guy is like, "Yeah." So, Mark already knew something, and if that's called pre-show or hot reading. And then, Mark did all kinds of other things, but Mark had a very interesting personality. And as I say, he was very well read, watched lots and lots of movies from the seance world, the world of mediums. Oh my gosh. And there was a story that he had seen in a video of a clown in a graveyard. And it was at nighttime, and the clown is going along and he's putting flowers on each of the graves. And it was creepy, right? Okay. So Mark just took that vision and he tried it a few times at a few different shows, and nothing really happened. But he does his standard cold reading and whatever he's doing with the audience. There's videos of him doing this, some on this channel, some on my Susan Gerbic channel. And and in this particular instance, and I do have the video, I think it's called Clown in the Graveyard. What he does is, he's done his whole kind of thing and he's getting towards the end, he's getting tired, and he throws out, "I'm getting a vision of a clown in a graveyard at night, all dressed up as a clown." And the clown is going around and they're putting flowers on the graves. And something with Shirley, something with the name Shirley. And this woman jumps up out of the audience and she is freaked out. "How did you know?" And she starts, and Mark's like, "Yeah, I'm having this vision," because he's honing right in on this woman who's self-selected herself to be the one that fits my family. And he's like, "Well, tell me about it." And she says, "My name isn't Shirley, but my name is Cheryl, but he always used to call me Shirley." And the audience is like, "Whoa." Because Mark at the end of his show is going to reveal that how he did it. That was part of his gig. He would do an audience thing, tell them that he was getting messages from beyond, and then at the last 10 minutes or whatever the show, he would explain that the cold reading techniques and Barnum statements and stuff like that, and to be more skeptical, see how easily it is to fool you. Well, this woman came over afterwards and she was adamant. She says, "There's no way you knew that. How in the world did you know that? How did you know that there was this man in our town who was very creepy, but he would dress up as a clown, he'd come around and he would put them on the graves." And she says, "I nearly threw up." She says, "I nearly threw up when you selected me out of the audience and said that you saw that there was a man in my town who called me Shirley." And we're all looking at this lady like, "What are you talking about? He did not select you out of the audience. He did not specifically tell you that you had this, that you were called Shirley, even though your name isn't Shirley, it's Cheryl." And she's like, "No, there's nothing you can say that would convince me." She stormed out. We were like, "Whoa, somebody catch that woman and sit her down and explain to her that wasn't what happened." And hopefully, we didn't see her again, but hopefully she thought about it and explained, ran over the scenario in her mind again when she was a little more clear and thoughtful. But she really believed, and it had been like 10 minutes, from the time that Mark told her to the time she was in the audience. He tells her, "I did not select you. I threw it out to the audience. The law of large numbers means that sometimes you could throw spaghetti at the wall and it's going to stick. And if it's really unusual, it might stick really big." She's like, "Nope. Mm-mm. You knew that. You called me out. You picked me out of the audience." It's fascinating to watch. It really was. And like I said, I think there's a video on it on this channel called Clown in the Graveyard. It's really interesting. Anyway, lots to learn, you guys. There's so much out there, but I wanted to make this video just to have another conversation with y'all. And I think that I personally, I do believe that we're seeing, unless something happens, unless something major happens and there's some shift that you know, is picked up by TV, or maybe some psychic out there, you know, does figure out where a body is accidentally, but the way it's reported in the media, it looks like they're finding dead people that have been abducted or something. Or like I say, some new TV show comes out, because there really hasn't been anything, new TV shows or anything of that sort. I think even Tyler Henry's just got a Netflix show right now in 2024. He came out in the summer, and I think it's been playing a little bit in 2025, but even that, I don't think there's any big shows out there. They're all like doing casino shows and stuff like that, trying to hang on. As I said, there's a lot of competition. So they've outpriced themselves with what they've done. So mark my words. Get it? Mark my words. If you like that, give me a like, please. Leave me a comment. So I'm still getting messages from Matt Fraser. Maybe I'll do another video really soon on all the messages that Matt Fraser keeps giving me, sending me emails, giving me discounts on his readings that he's doing at Vegas and so on. You know, click now and get a discount. It's like, really, dude? How desperate are you? Are you really having that much trouble filling the shows? Yes, you are. I think every day, or at least 5 days a week, I get an email from his staff saying that, you know, please, please, please get a reading from me. And a lot of other psychics, because I'm on a lot of mailing lists, are telling me almost every day, you know, oh, I have a sale on my readings now. And it's like, I have a years long waiting list, they'll say. And how are you having a year-long waiting list if you are trying to get somebody to get a reading from you at a discount, and they're constantly saying that? So, I mean, common sense, right? Okay. So as usual, you guys, please leave me comments. I love hearing from you. Please reach out to me on social media. All the social media is out there, as well as you can get a hold of me by putting Yahoo or Gmail in front of behind the Susan Gerbic name. I just use my real name most places, or S. Gerbic, a lot of social media places. Reach out to me if you have actual videos you want to show me that you think you'd like to have me analyze. I would rather have that than for you to say, research psychic so-and-so, because I really would like to know what you think is really good or you are very confused about, because I'm just going to pick a video just at random, and it may not be something that is supposedly their best work. And I'd like to know what you consider a good example of their work would be, you know, that kind of thing. So please send me those things. I appreciate it. But all right, that's it for now. Take good care of yourselves out there, and you know, think critically, educate your family and friends around you. Don't give them the answer and make them feel silly about things, but have conversations with people that you love or you associate with and you have a good relationship with, but more along the lines of, you know, I was thinking about this the other day about why it is that psychics are not finding people. Why do we have so many missing people? Why are the police investigating when we could just call up a psychic? I thought psychics were supposed to be able to communicate with dead people. And if so, wouldn't they just communicate with a dead person and the dead person say, yeah, I'm over here in the woods, you know, I'm, you know, keep going a little further, you know, okay, dig down. You would think they'd be saying that. Or they could say, you know, why is it that the psychics are never really clear? They don't really get full names. They just get like initials sometimes. So if you have conversations with the people around you that are more like questioning, not like, boy, these people who go to mediums are a bunch of idiots. Never do that. But if you introduce these kinds of questions and have it like a discussion with them, I think we're going to get a lot farther in this world, where it's going to make it more difficult for people to be victims of these psychics, because when you're in a vulnerable state, that's when it's more likely that you're going to fall for these kinds of people and this kind of scam. But you don't know when you're going to fall for that victim. You don't know when you're going to be in that position yourself. So it's better to inoculate people ahead of time. Talk about it with them in a friendly, conversational way, having a discussion on it. So if that opportunity happens where they feel like they're in a very vulnerable situation, they're lonely, they're just confused about life, or they've lost somebody close to them, or somebody is in very bad health around them, or you have a job loss, or somebody breaks up with you and you're just devastated, hopefully they will have pause and say, I don't think, if an opportunity comes up for a psychic to give them a reading, they would say, I don't think this is a good use of my money. I remember having that conversation with so and so, and I think there's a lot of grift to this. Maybe I will try therapy, or I'll go to my pastor or my rabbi, or talk to my aunt, because she's always treated me right and she's given me the best advice. Or I'm going to go to a teacher or a counselor or something like that, instead of going to a medium, which their peers might be recommending. So inoculate people with a little information ahead of time. I think it'll be easier than waiting until somebody's in the clutches of one of these people and then saying, I think that you're falling for a psychic scam. And then they're gonna be like, not me, no way, I'm not stupid, I would never fall for a psychic scam, my psychic is real, and you guys, you don't know what you're talking about. So if you're going to wait until that situation, I don't think it's a healthy situation. It's too hard to get them out of that situation once they're already in it. Okay, my wisdom for today, take it or leave it. But anyway, in the description under this video, I will put the link to that article that I sort of read to you. And then if you will leave me comments, I would appreciate it. Like, subscribe, leave comments. That allows YouTube more reason to recommend my video to more people. And that's how actually most people watch my videos. Is the majority of the people who find these videos are finding it because of suggestions by YouTube. I know this because I get all the stats. Subscribers are a very small percentage of people who return. It is like 10%, but I think I'm getting 40 or 50% of people are coming to the videos because their YouTube is suggesting it to them. So, but I still love you, subscribers. Please come back. I love this little community where we're talking. Take care, everyone.